It's a riddle. Speak friend and enter. What's the Elvish word for friend?
Melon.
We are all acquainted with the Lord of the Rings movies, which centers itself around the Ring of Power. As a foundation, the movies use the 6 books of J.R.R. Tolkien that are split in 3 volumes: The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers and The Return of the King. It's one of the more influential fantasy stories of our time. In the first volume we can read, "As for any inner meaning or message, it has in the intention of the author none. It is neither allegorical nor topical. As the story grew it put down roots and threw out unexpected branches, but its main theme was settled from the outset by the inevitable choice of the ring as the link between it and the Hobbit. The crucial chapter, The Shadow of the Past, is one of the oldest parts of the tale. If there are any allegorical elements to this fantasy story, we can assume it did not come from Tolkien's conscious mind, but instead from his unconscious mind. From the unconscious there emanate determining influences which, independently of tradition, guarantee in every single individual a similarity and even a sameness of experience, and also of the way it is represented imaginatively. One of the main proofs of this is the almost universal parallelism between mythological motifs. It has been known and accepted for a long time now that every individual has a conscience and an unconscious mind, and that this unconscious mind exerts a big impact on the conscious mind of individuals without them knowing about it. This impact is the consequence of the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious is a part of the psyche which can be distinguished from a personal unconscious by the fact that it does not, like the latter, owe its existence to personal experience. The contents of the collective unconscious have never been in consciousness and therefore have never been individually acquired, but owe their existence exclusively to heredity. Whereas the personal unconscious consists for the most part of complexes, the content of the collective unconscious is made up essentially of archetypes. In almost every mythological, fantasy or religious story throughout the world we find themes that bear striking similarities. Carl Jung's study of psychology, mythology, alchemy, philosophy and religion did help him to form the idea of the archetypes.
Do I get yes?
I don't think so. I'm looking for a great warrior.
The concept of the archetype, which is an indispensable correlate of the idea of the collective unconscious, indicates the existence of definite forms in the psyche, which seems to be present always and everywhere. Archetypes possess the capacity to initiate, control and mediate the common behavioral characteristics and typical experiences of all human beings. Thus, on appropriate occasions, archetypes give rise to similar thoughts, images, mythologems, feelings and ideas in people. In the mythological world of Tolkien, we naturally find a lot of archetypes like Gandalf the wise old man, Aragorn the king, Boromir the warrior, the smaller than small and greater than great hobbits who are archetypical manifestations of the child.
There were 2 hobbits. Do you see 2 hobbits with them?
They would be small. Only children choose.
Legolas and Gimli as forces of nature, to name just the characters of the Fellowship. One of the main and most known archetypes which we will discuss here further is the shadow. Man has to realize that he possesses a shadow which is the dark side of his personality, if only for the reason that he is so often overwhelmed by it.
Can't get rid of your shadow, can you?
What demon?
Everybody got the demon in here, okay? The demon lives in
The demon of the ancient world.
If we step through the door of the shadow, we discover with terror that we are the objects of unseen factors. To know this is decidedly unpleasant, for nothing is more disillusioning than the discovery of our own inadequacy.
It's like banging on a door. You knock on a door, and the door opens slightly, and behind that door it's dark, and there's loud noises coming, like there's wild animals in there or something.
In Thus Spoke Zarathustra we can read in Noontide, which is the first chapter after the shadow, about the golden ring. What, had not the words just now become perfect, round and ripe? Oh, for the golden round ring, whither doth it fly? Let me run after it, quick. Carl Jung, in his writings about rebirth and experience of the transcendence of life, interpreted this image of the ring as follows. The moment of eternity is the noonday hour sacred to Pan. Even the golden ring, the ring of return, appears to him as a promise of resurrection and life. There are a lot of stories, legends and myths in the history of mankind about the ring, and they all point in different ways to one certain meaning which is relevant to every individual. For example, we can read about Plato's ring of Gyges that gives invisibility, Sir Parsifal's ring that makes him invulnerable to death, or the ring of Nebulon that grants the power to rule the world. In the Lord of the Rings story, we find the ring of power which can grant longer life, invisibility, and for certain wearers the power to rule the world. For us, the ring is a symbol for our inner shadow, or dark desires and qualities, which in the final analysis boils down to one certain craving, which has in certain regards a will of its own. In the movies, we see this inner shadow manifested in different characters who are all tempted by the ring.
Don't tempt me further.
No one seems to be safe for its inner temptations. In these characters, we see all of them lose control over their own will by their shadow for a while or totally. They are getting possessed by the dark side of their being. Unfortunately, there can be no doubt that man is, on the whole, less good than he imagines himself or wants to be. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is.
I gave you the chance of aiding me willingly, but you have elected the way of pain.
Probably the most memorable character in the movies is Smeagol and Gollum. He represents our own inner struggle, the ultimate and final battle in our inner being.
He hates and loves the ring, as he hates and loves himself.
Which is the reason why he is so popular and liked by people. We see a lot of our own unconscious qualities and battle in this character that most people deny about themselves, because everyone likes to see himself as a good moral person. When an individual makes an attempt to see his shadow, he becomes aware of those qualities and impulses he denies in himself but can plainly see in other people. By watching Smeagol vs. Gollum, we are witnessing our own inner battle between the ego and our shadow.
I hate you. I hate you.
Ego and shadow, indeed, although separate, are inextricably linked together in much the same way that thought and feeling are related to each other. The ego, nevertheless, is in conflict with the shadow in what Dr. Jung called the battle for deliverance. People need to be aware of their inner shadow, for if they deny their own shadow qualities and desires, they will eventually become possessed by the shadow, and this possession of the shadow on a collectivist scale, nation or worldwide, will lead to the horrors we have told ourselves must never happen again. By not being aware of having a shadow, you declare a part of your personality to be non-existent. Then it enters the kingdom of the non-existent, which swells up and takes enormous proportions. If you get rid of qualities you don't like by denying them, you become more and more unaware of what you are. You declare yourself more and more non-existent, and your devils will grow fatter and fatter.
I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
One could see the shadow as the Latin phrase homo homini lupus, which means a man is a wolf to another man, or as an old Native American proverb goes, there are two wolves fighting in all of us. The first one is evil, the second is good. Which wolf will win? The one you feed. The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. This act is the essential condition for any kind of self-knowledge, and it therefore as a rule meets with considerable resistance.
And you peer into the darkness and you can't see what's there, but you can hear all this ugly stuff. You want to step into that room? No way. You just sort of back out quietly, pull the door shut behind you, and walk away from it.